海賊は肉で宴をやるけど。
This book is called Ancient America and Notes on American Archaeology by John D. Baldwin, author of Prehistoric Nations. This is from 1872. We're on page 159. It says here, the oldest of civilizations. Some investigators who have given much study to the antiquities, traditions, old books, and probable geological history of Mexico and Central America. All right, so very important. Those who have investigated, those people who have given much study, those who actually do research of the antiquities and the actual traditions and actually research in these old books and probable geological history of Mexico and Central America believe that the first civilization the world ever saw appeared in this part of ancient America. All right, the first civilization of the world. They're not just talking about the Americas, they're talking about the very first civilization. Those investigators who have actually taken the time to study, given much study to these people, to this part of the world, believe and know that this is where the first civilization first ever appeared. All right, in this part of ancient America says, or was immediately connected with it. They hold that the human race first rose to civilized life in America. All right, first civilized life in America. That's the cradle of all in America, okay, in ancient America, which is geologically the oldest of the continents. I remember geologically meaning the land is the oldest out of the primordial waters. It's the oldest. They found it. The most renowned geologist, Luis Agassiz, told us. The Mayak, the Mayas, isn't their story. They tell us they came out of the bottom of the sea, their land, Mayak. And it's proven geologically. There's a part in Canada, one of the oldest parts in the world that came out of the water. That's what they're saying according to their science. And that ages ago, the portion of this continent on which the first civilizers appeared was sunk beneath the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so they're saying something happened. Usually the engulfing of this portion of the land is supposed to have been affected by some tremendous convulsion of nature, and there is appeal to recollections of such a catastrophe, said to have been preserved in the old books of Central America. And it is. We've talked over this. And also in those of Egypt, from which Solon received an account of the lost Atlantis. Now, according to this hypothesis, the American continent formerly extended from Mexico, Central America, and New Granada far into the Atlantic Ocean, toward Europe and Africa, covering all the space now occupied by the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and the West India Islands. So they're saying that America extended that far. You hear what they're telling you, right? So it was still part of America. And going far beyond them toward the east and northeast, this lost portion, all right, this lost portion of America, remember, it's just an extension of America. This lost portion of the continent was the Atlantis, of which the old annals of Egypt told so much in the time of Solon. They're letting you know this is the actual place they were calling Atlantis. It was just an extension, a lost portion of America. These are the same stories of the old annals of Egypt that Plato told us. And it was the original seat of the first human civilization, the original seat. Just like the Egyptians said that the ancestors, their ancient ancestors, were from a western distant land where the first the people of the earth came about, which after the great cataclysm was renewed and perpetuated in the region where we now trace the mysterious remains of ancient cities. Those desiring to know what can be said in support of this view of ancient America must read the later volumes of Brasseur de Bourbourg, especially his Quatre Lettres sur le Mexique and his Sources de la Historia Primitive du Mexique. So we're going to get this book, we're going to get the full translation, even if we have to translate it from French. I got the actual books. These are in the archives, and we're able to be able to see these books.
Right, ancient Egyptian tombs inside the Grand Canyon. That's what an explorer found right before the government closed the area off from the public. Way back in 1909, the Arizona Gazette reported a story of a miner, G.E. Kincaid, looking for gold in the Grand Canyon. While journeying down the river, he came across what looked like steps carved into the canyon side, so he decides to check it out. The steps, he claimed, were perfectly carved, not a natural formation, and as he approached the top, he came across a man-made cave entrance, which do exist all around the Grand Canyon, but this one was different. He went inside, turned on his light, and saw tunnels chiseled with perfect architecture and more branching paths deeper inside. He kept going until he comes across an enormous room several hundred feet long. In the middle stood a giant statue of what looked like Buddha, holding lotus flowers in each hand. Now, Buddha has nothing to do with ancient Egypt, which actually makes this more of a mind trip, but we're getting there, I promise. This looks like it was an ancient underground city, which actually exists all around the world in places like Derinkuyu in Turkey. Kincaid was amped. This gotta be the discovery of the century, so of course he leaves and asks for funding to explore more from the Smithsonian, the world-leading museum research and education institute, the gatekeeper of archaeological findings made by the US government, who gladly agree. They send a team of scientists and miners led by S.A. Jordan to fully excavate this mind-blowing discovery. With this team backing the expedition, Kincaid goes back to the caves and realized he barely scratched the surface. He left extremely detailed journal entries describing the whole excavation, with hallways up to 12 feet wide and large oval doorways throughout the underground complex. During this excavation, they find full full-size rooms which appear to have been made for dining, winding halls with detailed architecture, and artifacts like pottery, urns, and to their surprise, copper tools and swords, along with rooms built for metalwork. All signs of an ancient civilization far more advanced than what should have been here at the time. But then they find this: Egyptian hieroglyphs carved and painted on the walls, and stone tablets with similar hieroglyphs engraved. And then finally what appeared to be a crypt, filled with little cubby holes in the walls, each containing mummies of giant humanoids, some even being reported as reptilian looking. Yeah, Egyptian tombs in the Grand Canyon. They call this complex the Citadel, and by the end of their expedition, hundreds of rooms were discovered, estimated to house up to 50,000 people. They determined that, of course, this must be the remains of an advanced civilization that were here before the natives, and somehow brought the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians from the other side of the world into the Americas. G.E. Kincaid and S.A. Jordan presented their Egyptian hypothesis to the Smithsonian, who obviously did not like the sound of that and denied further excavation. Egyptian hieroglyphs spotted outside of Egypt? Absolute nonsense, right? Maybe, but this isn't the only time that such a claim was made, like the Gosford hieroglyphs carved into rock in Australia, which look almost identical to that of the Egyptians. It's hard to tell exactly how old they are, but of course they're labeled a hoax. Someone else carved them here a few years ago to trick the world. Or the written language of the Mi'kmaq, a Native American tribe that lived along the Atlantic coast, which shares a baffling number of similarities with Egyptian hieroglyphs, two cultures that allegedly had no contact among each other. This one was just a coincidence, of course, just like the Fuente Magna bowl found in Bolivia with Proto-Sumerian cuneiform script writing on it. That's ancient Mesopotamian writing uncovered in South America. So artifacts of ancient Middle Eastern civilizations found in the Americas have happened, but we just ignore them. To this day, the Smithsonian denies this expedition in the Grand Canyon ever happened, and the stories of the explorers are of course deemed a hoax. So is any of this real? The native indigenous people seem to think so. Native American tribes like the Navajo, Zuni, Acoma Pueblo have legends of a race that existed there before them, even citing the Grand Canyon specifically as the place where the first people emerged from. These myths all speak of either a race of reptilians, yes, we're in lizard people territory now, or giants that civilized the area, building underground cities to protect themselves. The Hopi tribe even have a story about a sky god who, after a series of cataclysms, emerged from a moving star and took the tribe to underground caves in the Grand Canyon region to protect them. The Havasupai people believe the canyon is the home of the Supai, the spirit of their ancestors. The Paiute culture got the legend of the Havmusubs, who also lived in an underground city and had silver tubes that shot lightning that could end a man's life, and silver canoes in the sky, which all line up perfectly with the flood myths, not to mention UFO sightings, around the world where godlike beings descend from the sky and gift civilization to humanity. And is exactly why the Smithsonian cringes at the thought of admitting to this, because it would imply that cultures like the ancient Egyptians had overseas contact with the Americas, completely destroying their current narrative of isolationism, which states that groups of humans evolved independently of each other all around the world. Today, this section of the Grand Canyon has some interesting official names for the formations found here, like the Tower of Set, Horus, Isis Temple, Ra, the Cheops Pyramid, all Egyptian names, and these formations have the weirdest, most interesting shapes, unlike those found in any other canyon. Alright, enough yapping. Where is this cave, and can't we just go to it today to prove this once and for all? Really thought it was that easy, huh? The exact area where the Citadel would be found has, of course, been marked off limits by the government. The Grand Canyon has hundreds of man-made caves all over it that are confirmed real, with only 30 that have been officially mapped out, some of which are sealed with steel gates for safety. When amateur explorers tried checking out the region, planes and helicopters would appear out of nowhere over areas designated as no-fly zones, some claiming they can even spot remnants of pyramids and other ancient structures in the cliffs of the canyon, implying the Grand Canyon may actually be the site of a bustling ancient city. Rumors of ancient Egyptian remains in underground cities in the Grand Canyon. Government closes the area off, and then planes and drones are found scouting the area. Are they hiding something from us, or am I just gonna get stitched into another Mr. Know-It-All debunking video?
This is Ames Monument, found in Beaufort, Wyoming. This structure is 60 feet tall, made out of pure granite. They say it was made as a monument to the Ames brothers, who were major financiers of the Transcontinental Railroad. Said to be built in 1869 with no power tools and no way to move these type of granite blocks. Cap. People in that area know that monument was there before 1869.
And like the pyramids of Egypt and Central America, Ames Monument also contains passageways and hollow spaces.
Just like the pyramids of Egypt In South America, this pyramid has passageways to enter. That further lets me know someone stayed in this pyramid at one point of time. And the face on this monument, the granite, does not match the original granite. That further lets me know that face was put on this structure. Let's keep going.
It is hollow to save labor and materials.
In October of 2010, under the direction of the state of Wyoming, skilled masons opened up one of the narrow passageways into the structure and allowed architects to map out its interior.
It was just a real high point in my life, that moment of getting in there and standing up and looking around.
To walk around in it, there's like a 6-foot passage that goes around the interior of the pyramid around a central mass. And the stones that are in there kind of hang out and jut out, and they're very crude, and there's no floor to speak of. It goes up and down, and at the corners in the interior are some columns that you can go through, and in one corner there is carved out sort of a bigger room-like. And so there may have been gatherings in there of the workers.
Gatherings of the workers inside of the pyramid, huh? Cap. Look at these stones on this pyramid. They didn't build it. We know the truth now.
Map of ancient pyramid civilizations and prehistoric communities. All right, now if you look at this map, it is a map of modern day America. And look at all the pyramids in America. Just look at it. I'm going to get into it later.
Up in Idaho camping, would you look at this? I think I found an ancient mound. Because that's a pyramid-like. Not gonna explore it this weekend, but gonna come back up here. We gonna get to that spot. Cause that's looking really, it's like a nipple.
While searching on Google Earth, I came across what looked to be a pyramid, but this wasn't in Egypt. This was in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, miles from the nearest town or civilization. So I had to go check it out for myself, and I drove several hours to go find out what this was.
I just found the coordinates from Google Earth. There's a pyramid here in the middle of the high plains of Wyoming. What in the world is this? It's huge. It's so windy. Stuck in the air, right? So apparently this was designed by a famous architect in the late 1800s named H.H. Richardson, and it was dedicated as a monument to the Ames brothers. I don't know what you all think, but this looks a little peculiar to me. A pyramid in the middle of the high plains of Wyoming. What do you all think it's?
Look at the pyramid over there. There's pyramids everywhere, whether you realize it or not. There's like 3 of them I can see from my house. Well, in my area, not exactly from my house. Thanks.
Lost City. Amateurs claim to have found 1,200-year-old underwater city with pyramids and energy field off the U.S. coast. Oh my goodness, let's get into it. So this 1,200-year-old city is off the coast of New Orleans in Mississippi. Let's read this. What's down there? Hundreds of buildings that are covered with sand and slits that are geologically related to the Great Pyramids of Giza. So they basically connecting these pyramids with the pyramids of Giza. They didn't talk too much about the energy field, and we know why. But let's watch the video and see what dude got to say about the pyramids he found.
Discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization
Pay attention.
off the coast of St. Bernard Parish.
He claims there are large mounds underwater that may have once been the site of a lost city thousands of years ago.
Paul Murphy reports local fishermen have long talked about strange and unexplained things happening in that area.
Them pyramids.
The Chandeleur Islands are a chain of uninhabited barrier islands located in the Gulf of Mexico, 50 miles east of New Orleans. But 12,000 years ago, before a dramatic sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, this area may have been dry land.
3 different search areas.
Our ancestors was
Retired architect and amateur archaeologist George Gillet believes the site, now underwater, was once home to an ancient civilization. He dubbed the city Crescentis.
What's down there is hundreds of buildings that are covered with sand and silt and that are geographically related to the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Come on now.
Giza
So
is
when
a
we
city
say
in northern
Egypt is over here,
where ancient pyramids and the
when we
Sphinx
say
are located.
Egypt was over here,
Gillet claims to have found mysterious mounds of granite under Chandeleur Sound. Granite is not native to Louisiana or Mississippi.
Somebody floated a billion stones down the Mississippi River
a
and
billion
then assembled
stones
them outside of what would later become New Orleans.
Egypt was in America too. Let me know what y'all think about them finding pyramids in New Orleans in the comments. Like and follow for more wisdom and stay tuned.
Question of the day. How come all these places called Egypt, right? And all the places called Cairo is in the same exact spot, right? With these pyramids exactly in the same spot. Can somebody please, because 3 coincidences? Come on, 3 coincidences? Come on, bro. We're not just going to play stupid. Can anybody tell me today about this so-called mystery? And while you answering it, where did the Egyptians go? Please, can you answer this? And then the Mississippi River, like the same map of Egypt, and our name can get changed, black color. Why you keep changing our name?
Now, I don't know about y'all, but that kind of looks like a pyramid to me, right? Kind of looks like a pyramid
Texas
with a little temple thing at top, like Chichen Itza. That was pretty cool. And there's this.
Well, this is a chapel or temple of Maya. Now, Maya was a title, not a name, of both men and women throughout dynastic times. This particular era is around the 18th dynasty, the time of the so-called King Horemheb. Now, the key thing here is 1997, Hakim came to the United States, to California. He and my research partner, Bob Butter, and I met him for a couple of weeks, and we discussed. One of the things he discussed on a return trip to Egypt in September of 1997 would be, he said, he would show us evidence of a Mayan temple in Egypt.
Mayan as in culture.
Exactly. And I said, this I never heard of. No, it's not in any text. No one has ever mentioned it. Okay, we came here. This was arranged differently then. A lot of this is new construction. It was not this way in 1997. First of all, I looked on the wall. Behind you, you see that is Maya, but he looks typically Commissioned. Right. And I'm looking around, typically Commissioned. All the looks. So Hakim would use the expression, well, you know, Stephen, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. He's living in Kemet. He's going to pass in Kemet, so he's portraying himself as a Commission. So I said, well, Papa, this is great, but I can't go with this in front of an academic audience. They'll laugh me off the stage. There's nothing here to identify with the culture we're talking about. But then there was a keeper like this gentleman here, was here, didn't speak any English, but saw that I was perplexed. He said, come here. This den was boarded up with just a wooden door. And it was latched there. He threw away the wooden slabs, opened the door, and he said, look up. And that is the key. Took a picture in 1997. Sent it to Mayan daykeeper Hanbat's men. He said he recognizes this as the language of the Itza people, whereas Chichen Itza, he said, is an ancient language. But a lot of people are not sure about Hanbat's men. So we went one step further. In 2010, I got to meet Don Alejandro Sul Ojaj. He is the wisdom keeper, the head of the Quiche Maya of all of Guatemala. I showed him this picture, and his eyes went as big as saucers. And he said to me, that is the language of my ancestors. That is a calendar. That is telling the date of when Maya was here. And how we can't read it, he can't even still read it, but he knows that the circles and squares and different colors, arrangements, and the spokes in the wheel are indications of a date. So, this has never been discussed by any Egyptologist. They cannot put this in a Commission context. There is nothing, or maybe there is others that Yosef has seen, but there's nothing like this in the rest of Egypt. So Mayan elders recognize this as part of their culture. So now the key is, Maya, the word is a title. Men and women had the title. Very interesting because we've talked about the difference between Egyptian Arabic and other Arabic. In Egypt, one of the key words for water is Maya. It is not pronounced the same way in any other Arabic country. If you went to Saudi Arabia, they would say Ma or Meh. Only in Egypt is it pronounced Maya. And it means water. So I asked Hakim, could the title Maya actually have meant he who came from across the water, or ones who came from across the water? He said yes. So here is what we call diffusionism archaeology, diffusionism anthropology, saying that there had to be cultural contact between these individuals thousands of miles across the sea. And this is the evidence that Hakim told us that there was a Mayan living in Egypt 3,300 years ago. Let somebody else define that for me and tell me that that is Commission or Egyptian or dynastic or anything else.
Alright, so there was again the book by Augustus Le Plongeon. Thus, it is that we come to learn from the pen of an ancient Maya philosopher that the name of his people, once upon a time so broadly scattered over the face of the earth, had its origin in that of the country they inhabited, alright, the time of the word Maya, a place situated in the northern tropical parts of western continent, in that land of Cuy, alright, where the sprout is, in Guatemala, that mysterious home of their ancestors, where the Egyptians thought the souls of their departed friends went to dwell, alright, the underworld, which was known to its inhabitants as Mayak, alright, Mayak, the land of Cuy, a word that in their language meant the first land. The land just sprouted, the first land, alright, motherland, also the hard land, the terra firma, as we learn from the sign of aspiration, hardness, coagulation, place each side of the body of the calabash to indicate perhaps the rocky formation of its soil, and that it had withstood the awful cataclysms which swept from the face of the earth the land of Mu, and many other places with their populations. The priests of Egypt, Chaldea, and India preserved the remembrance of their destruction in the archives of their temples, as did those of the Mayak on the other side of the ocean. So real quick, I just want to go to the footnote here, talk about the land of Cuy. It says 1 right here before we continue. And it says 1, right? Look what it says. It says, Sir Gardner Wilkinson, Manners and Customs of Ancient Egyptians, Volume 3, page 70. All right, get that. Cuy land. All right, Cuy land. According to the Maya language, the land of the gods. The birthplace of the goddess Maya. The goddess who? Maya. The mother of gods. Of men. The feminine energy of Brahma, by whose union with Brahma all things were produced. Alright? Who is Buddha's mom? Maya. Her name is Maya. And his name is Guatemala. We're talking about Guatemala, right? Being the sprout, the place where they all spring up, all those volcanoes creating land, the first land. Alright? Look that up. That's in Manners and Customs of Ancient Egyptians, Volume 3. Talking about Cuy land, according to the Maya language, the land of the gods, the birthplace of all their gods, even in Egypt. All right, so real quick, we're in encyclopediabritannica.com. All right, and it says here we're talking about Maha Maya, or the mother of who? Gautama Buddha, Guatemala, Guatemala. Maha Maya, Maya mother, Maya, the mother of all the goddess, all the gods. Mahamaya, also called Maya, the mother of Gautama Buddha. She was the wife of Raja Shuddhodana, it says here, right? Gautama, Gautama Buddha, Guatemala, Guatemala, Guatemala or Gautama, Guatemala, all right? Guatemala, 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 Guatemala. What does it say here? The lost history of the little people. They're spiritually advanced. Now it says here, let me see, it says the key, the hub, had to be Central America. For all indicators, mark it as one of the first colonies established from the motherland, the inundated Pacific lands. They're talking about Mu, right? The particular spot where they landed was Mexico. The capital city of the Quetzals was established thereabouts in Guatemala. And then says, what does it say? Guatemala in parentheses, right? It's not just me correlating this. It's very old name of the Americas. Guatemala is a very old name of the Americas. One of the 5 landing places after the flood, hence Guatemala. All right, one of the landing places after the flood. These Quetzals of milk white skin, Dash the hijack, were the first foreign settlers in Mesoamerica. Guatemala is the nation of the Quiche Maya people, and in South America, its cognate Quechua is the language spoken by their long-lost cousins, the Incas. All right, cousins of the who? Quiches, Quichua, Quiche, Quechua. Quechua, Cusco means navel, right? Cusco. All right. And, we're back in the book Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx by Augustus Le Plongeon. When Aryan colonists had not yet established their first settlements on the banks of the river Saraswati in the Punjab, and the primitive Egyptian settlers in the valley of the Nile did not fancy. All right, so they're telling you before any Hindu people or any people in Hindustan or anybody in the valley of the Nile or right there or the other side of Egypt or any Egyptian wherever Egypt was, they're saying that there was nobody there. There was not a fancy. Even their most hopeful daydreams that their descendants would become the great people whose civilization was to be the cradle of that of Europe. There existed on the western continent a nation, the Maya, that had attained to a high degree of culture in arts and sciences, all right? So before they could even daydream, all right? Before them, before the Hindus, before the Egyptians, there existed on the western continent the Mayas, all right? It says here, Valmiki, and his beautiful epic, the Ramayana, which is said to have served as a model to Homer's Iliad, all right, you see? So Homer's Iliad came from the Ramayana. Tells us that the Mayas were mighty navigators, all right? So the Ramayana, all right, this is a Hindu book or epic or poem, all right? So we're in Ancient History Encyclopedia, just real quick so we can get a reference, right, of what we're talking about. So the Ramayana, do you see the word Maya in it? What is the Ramayana? It's an ancient Indian epic composed sometime in the 5th century BC. All right, so they're saying it's supposedly more than 2,000 years old. All right, about the exile and then return of Rama, prince of Ayodhya. It was composed in Sanskrit by the sage Valmiki. All right, we just heard that name, right? So Valmiki, who taught it to Rama's sons, the twins Lava and Kush. Kush, like Kush, son of Ham. At about 24,000 verses, it is rather long poem, and by tradition it is known as the Adi Kavya. Adi meaning original, and then first, Kadiya, or first poem. All right? So it's very old writing. So let's go back to Queen Mu and continue reading again. It said that Valmiki in his beautiful epic, the Ramayana, which is said to have served as model for Homer's Iliad, tells us that the Mayas were mighty navigators. All right, you can go verify that it's in there, and I did. Whose ships traveled from the western to the eastern ocean, from the southern to the northern seas, in ages so remote that the sun had not yet risen above the horizon. The sun was still not what? Oof. Wow. Long ago, all right? Remember? Long ago. Paleo. Long ago. Far, far in the distant past. Far, long ago. That being likewise great warriors, they conquered the southern parts of Hindustani. All right? That's what they call India today. It was called Hindustani. All right? That whole peninsula, they conquered it, right? And established themselves there. That being also learned architects, all right? Since they were also learned architects, Toltecs, Maya, all right? They built great cities and palaces, all right? They're talking about what they did in Hindustan. These Mayas became known in after times under the names of Danavas. You hear that? Danavas. Danavas, all right? We're going to learn about that too, all right? And are regarded by modern historians as aborigines of the country, or Nagas, as we shall see later on. All right, they're the aborigines of Hindustan. Who? The Mayas, who were known in Hindustani as the Nagas, the serpent people, the Amaru, Amarukan, plum serpent.
The True Fertile Crescent. Part 1. The Cradle of Civilization. Have you ever wondered why the region of the Earth mistakenly referred to as the Fertile Crescent is neither fertile nor shaped like a crescent? Together, Iraq, Syria, and Jordan possess some of the most desolate land known to man. This region is extremely arid and was equally arid 6,000 years ago, regardless of how well irrigated the river valleys were. Dependence on irrigation alone rules out Mesopotamia's candidacy for the true biblical paradise. Land suitable for farming is sparse, and fresh water even sparser. The only area found near this alleged cradle of civilization, which is remotely fertile, is Kurdistan with its scenic green highlands. However, Adam and Eve would have been unable to dwell in these mountains due to their frequent freezing temperatures. Some of these peaks snow year-round. The paradise of Eden displayed a distinctly subtropical climate, seeing as how its inhabitants were able to dwell without clothing or fire altogether. When we scan maps for a fertile, crescent-shaped area in the Middle East, Africa, Asia, the Pacific, or Europe, we find no such distinguishable region. That is until we cross the Atlantic and lay eyes upon the Gulf of Mexico, the very source of the miraculous Gulf Stream. These life-giving waters keep the Gulf Coast in a constant state of agreeable climate. It will be shown in this presentation that the Gulf of Mexico is the one and only true Fertile Crescent, and thus Florida, the Garden of Eden. Now enjoy. There is only one consistently fertile, crescent-shaped landmass on the Earth today. This perfect crescent extends from the tip of Florida to the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. The coastline therein possesses Earth's most agreeable, subtropical climate, the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world, a myriad of abundant produce, and not to mention thousands and thousands of pyramids. The Gulf Coast, Caribbean islands, and Bahamas display such lush vegetation and agreeable climate as to put the Mediterranean Sea and its barren coastlines to shame. The amniotic waters of the humid Gulf average 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the dehydrated, chilly Mediterranean. This is due entirely to the Gulf's sacred designation as the source of the Gulf Stream, the mother of all oceans, as will be discussed shortly. In this respect, the Middle East, again, comes up empty-handed. Florida is Eden. From its very inception as a European colony, Florida was likened to the Garden of Eden. In fact, on Columbus's third voyage to the so-called New World, he professed the lands he encountered around the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico to be the one and only earthly paradise. Interesting how they leave that part out of history class, yet endlessly subject us to Arab-centric propaganda furthered by countries who would have virtually no global relevance, save for the fact that they erroneously claim host to the birthplace of the Abrahamic religions. Up until World War II, it was not uncommon to hear Florida professed as the original Garden of Eden, as Arab-centric propaganda had not been cemented into our school systems. Land advertisements and articles of the pre-war eras reflect a seemingly widespread acknowledgement of this fact. A 1912 booklet, distributed by the Tampa Board of Trade, professed, "Florida climate proves that original Garden of Eden was located there." On the 8th of February, 1910, the Tampa Tribune printed that, quote, "The Garden of Eden was in Florida." The Tampa Tribune similarly printed the following on March 11, 1919. General Richard E. Edmonds is correct. Only the extremely ignorant and supremely jealous now deny that here was the original Garden of Eden. Not only was the original Garden of Eden in Florida, Much more to the point, it is still here, and there are no rivals." End quote. Dozens and dozens of articles and land advertisements echo the same consensus. Mesopotamia translates to the land amidst the rivers. In Genesis, 4 rivers went out of Eden: the Euphrates, the Pison, the Gihon, and the Hiddekel, also known as the Tigris. Of the modern Mesopotamia's erroneously attributed rivers, only the Tigris and Euphrates flow today, and the identities of the other 2, the Pison and the Gihon, are entirely up for debate. Keep in mind, within the mainstream narrative, the area of Iraq, Syria, and Jordan, labeled the cradle of civilization, required extensive irrigation to render their largely barren land remotely fertile, which automatically disqualifies it from the candidacy for Eden. Another truth, which is lost on scholars, is the fact that these 4 rivers came to a single head. This feature is not to be found on any of the eastern continents. Believe it or not, it is in Lake Seminole, located exactly on the Florida-Georgia line, that we find the planet's only true 4-headed river system. The 4 physical rivers of Eden are the Chattahoochee, Fish Pond Creek River, the Spring Creek River, and the Flint River. These 4 ancient names were carried to Asia on the Ark during the flood and reassigned to the 4 closest major rivers. This is how Eden was lost. But the Gulf Stream persisted, and thus the same unique ecosystems of Florida took hold again, and paradise was restored. This fact was uncovered by Christian theologian and lawyer L.V.E. Calloway, Florida's Republican candidate for governor in 1936, who was ordained a Baptist preacher at only 17 years old. Calloway was sent on a mission from God by none other than Dr. Brown Landone, renowned Florida mystic and author. Landone instructed Calloway to move from central to northern Florida after initiating him into what was called the Order of Melchizedek. After relocating to the Apalachicola River area, just outside of Tallahassee, Calloway found that of the 28 trees identified in the Bible, 27 of them grew in this unique Florida River Valley. We will return to the research of E.E. Calloway later on. Mississippi translates to either gathering in of all the waters or father of waters. Hearing the words father and waters together should prick the ears of anybody who is familiar with Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Meso is the same phonetic root found in the words Mexico and Mississippi. Mesopotamia could justly be referred to as Mexopotamia or Mississippotamia. Assuming the 4 rivers of Eden to be in Florida, we assert the original Nile River and its deltas, nicknamed the River of Isis, to be the Mississippi River and its deltas. The name Mississippi actually contains the name of the Egyptian goddess Isis within it. An alternate identity of the River Nile has been entertained by a multitude of free thinkers, including some of the very first European settlers, slaves, the founders of the Mormon religion, and modern revisionist movements such as Tartaria and Old World, as well as the Black Israelite movement. At the very least, most people should be able to agree that the Mississippi River, Gulf of Mexico, and Caribbean are the mirrored equivalent to the Nile and Mediterranean Sea. The land of the crescent moon. For those not yet convinced, you are about to be. If the Gulf of Mexico is the true Fertile Crescent, it would thus be the home of at least one Abrahamic religion. Now, Islam actually brandishes the Fertile Crescent, symbolized by the crescent moon and the planet Venus, the two luminaries which govern over fertility, as its primary symbol. Well, what if I told you that Islam actually originated in the Gulf of Mexico? For it was certainly present in the Americas well before Columbus's arrival. Don't believe me? Take a look at these so-called Native Americans. The Muskogee tribe of the southeast United States, also known as Creek or Seminole, bear the same phonetic root, mus, as Muslim, as do the native Muspa of Florida. Muskogees dress in a distinctly Moorish style that well suits the Moorish architecture scattered around the southeastern United States and Caribbean islands. Not only do the Muskogee dress in what could be described as Muslim garb, but the Muskogee Confederacy even employed a crescent moon and star insignia identical to that of Turkey and Morocco. In fact, dozens of nations use a variation of the Moorish crescent, and if I were searching for the remnants of a pre-Columbian transatlantic empire in the Americas, that's where I would start. With this understanding, I'd like to show you a supposedly satirical map displaying the divvying up of America should the Central Powers have defeated us in World War I. This map was printed by Life magazine. The Ottoman Turks were explicitly given claim to Florida. Interesting, to say the least. When we examine the overtly Turkish architecture of Tampa Bay, we see this is no coincidence. What if I told you Florida actually has a Turkey key, sitting directly next to Mormon Key? I think we should also re-examine the name of the islands, Turks and Caicos, which we are told are named purely for a fez-wearing cactus, nothing to do with the Turks. New Smyrna, Florida, a 1767 Ottoman colony, is, however, legitimately named after a Turkish city. So, is this map showing us an alternate destiny or an alternate history? A little-known fact, the Muskogee tribe of Florida actually allied with Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, against his colonial foes. Another undeniable link between the Gulf of Mexico and a pre-Columbian Muslim empire is the fact that the language family to which the Aztec languages belong is the Otomanguean family. Otomanguean is Otto-man. The crescent moons of the Gulf of Mexico are indeed Islamic in origin. Do you know where the word Caribbean comes from? It is named for the Carib people, who were native to its islands as well as the Gulf and Florida. Carib is nearly the same word as Arab, and this is no coincidence. If they had named the Caribbean Sea